Hey everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to another edition of ReWatching Legion. Today I'm talking about Season 1, Chapter 8. I'm just going to be sharing my general thoughts after having just finished rewatching this episode. In this episode, David faces his biggest challenge yet, which is trying to get the Shadow King out of his head finally. After all these years, after however old David is, and however long the Shadow King's been in him since he was a baby. And this whole episode revolves pretty much just around everybody just trying to get the Shadow King out of David's mind, / them also trying to convince the one agent from D3, whose name I could not figure out, but the one agent from D3 whose face got burned, who was interrogating David at the beginning of the season. So they're trying to convince that guy that they're not a threat, that there's a bigger threat than just, David and the other mutants. So I really like that they kind of were balancing these two things. We got them trying to deal with D3 as well as trying to deal with the Shadow King being in David and trying to get that out before the end of the day. They say in this episode a couple times that if they don't get him out by the end of this episode, or day I should say, that the Shadow King would be taking over David and erase him completely. So they go through a whole lot of stuff to get him out. Lenny, though, the Shadow King, ends up bringing Sid into the astral plane, which I thought was interesting because they've had the connection because they've switched before, and in order to convince Sid to help Lenny the Shadow King escape from David without killing David and without getting killed himself. So yeah, the Shadow King, they try to erase the Shadow King. The Shadow King kind of fights back, and then out of some, not some miraculous thing, it's Sid goes in, kisses David, that then puts the Shadow King though, into her. That's the part that's a little unclear. It's like, wait, but David still had his own personality. The bodies didn't seem to switch in this case. Sometimes their bodies switch, so that's why it's a little confusing. But it was kind of an interesting way for them to get the Shadow King out of David, and then eventually leading it into Oliver, which is how we leave this season off. Shadow King's in Oliver, and they're off to find, we don't know how, for those of us who, have already seen the second season, we know that they're off to go find Farouk's body. But we just leave this season off just being like they're driving off into the sunset pretty much, which I kind of like. I like the fact that they kind of they almost leave this season like a kind of open-ended and in a good way, but then they, after the credits, throw a little cliffhanger in there to be like, oh yeah, David gets sucked into a door, by the way, and that's how the season officially ends. And it's like, oh, okay, you guys almost had a great kind of open-ended ending where I don't have to be impatient and be like, oh, cliffhanger, I need an answer, because just Farouk being free, that's kind of open-ended enough that I can, be patient for an answer. Luckily on this rewatch, I don't have to be patient. I'm just going to watch the second season right after this video. But that being said, it's kind of interesting to see it on that rewatch. But yeah, what are some of my other thoughts? Yeah, there's not a whole lot to talk about about this one, which is a little bit disappointing when you're watching the season finale. But I thought it is because this show does kind of benefit from being, I think, a little more spread out with the episodes, as opposed to trying to binge it right away, because then you feel like this last episode felt like the quickest of all the episodes, because they just kind of go through it pretty quickly. We spent a big chunk of it actually with the agent from D3, so it's kind of an interesting kind of to see when a rewatch. I still enjoyed the episode, but it did seem pretty quick, and not a lot really happened in it as well, but I still really enjoyed this episode and enjoyed this first season. I'm excited to start rewatching the second season and hopefully get that completely done before the third season starts. But yeah, that's all my thoughts on this episode of Legion. I'm sure let me know in the comments below how you felt about the season finale of Legion, and how you felt overall about the whole first season. Were you excited for a second season when it first came out? Thanks again for joining me today. Sure, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a good one.